Germany, work in progress.
And good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Willem van Oort and I'm founder of Gaming in Germany. Gaming in Germany is the leading English business community for everyone who's professionally involved with or interested in the online German gaming market. We offer regular newsletters, print magazines, and events. With us today, we have Germany's leading gaming lawyer, Jörg Hoffmann, who is past president of the IMGL and group leader of the gaming and betting law practice of Melchers Law Firm. Also joining us from the UK is Martin Lycka, Senior Vice President for American Regulatory Affairs and Responsible Gaming at GVC Group. Martin, congratulations on your new role. It sounds like responsible gaming is fast becoming one of GVC's foremost priorities. Today, we'll be discussing the current situation regarding sports betting licensing in Germany. Although licensing has started, deadlines are incredibly tight, which is putting the industry in an impossible situation. Apart from discussing the current situation, we'll also be looking at possible solutions and courses of actions that are open to operators. Before we kick off the discussion, our listeners and viewers, of course, should know that this webinar was taped on the 11th of November. Our insights are current as of that date. By the time you're hearing or seeing this, the situation may or may not have changed. Please keep that in mind. Jörg, and good morning. Let's start with you. Jörg, what is the current situation with regards to sports betting licensing in Germany?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Most of you will know that there are the first 18 sports betting licenses granted to sports betting operators who managed to successfully apply for such license with the Regional Council in Darmstadt. And now we are seeing interesting times, which means the implementation of license concessions monitored by the gambling authority. And the question came up, how much time does the industry have? We have different categories. We have those who received the license. We have those whose applications are still pending and they would need some weeks to complete it. And we have those who never applied and will be considered as black market operators. So the interesting question was that the authority wanted the industry to submit sort of timetables telling step by step how much time they need to implement different requirements, meaning migration from .com sites to .de sites, implementing deposits, data connection, assessment to server, and so on. And of course, the industry calculated the time needed and obviously came up with some suggestions, which is more months than weeks, say 2 months, 3 months, if not more. Obviously, the regulator wasn't fine with that sort of timetable, and they decided to submit their own deadlines, a unique sort of timetable template to the 15 later additional 3 operators who got these licenses, which is absolutely not feasible in terms of timing to meet these new deadlines. That situation is absolutely timing. So over the weekend, I guess that many operators needed to make a decision how to deal with it, and how to deal with it in particular because there was a threat in that letter sent out by the regulator that they need to consider to revoke the license if deadlines will not be met. Under these circumstances, I'm pretty sure that many of these license holders decided to start litigation just to get that time they really need to implement all these detailed and comprehensive requirements. And it's not about buying time because they do not want to implement. It's simply because it is complicated and it takes a lot of time. That's a situation which is simply unnecessary, but there was no other choice for the industry to deal with it.
Quite clear, and thank you for that clear and short update. Jörg, the problem quite clear. How can or should that be solved?
Well, first of all, if litigation starts, you can always end it. So I think it's very, very important to start into a dialogue with the regulator. And my feeling is that the responsible regional council in Darmstadt is doing a good job in understanding the industry and trying to do the best. But my feeling is that they have certain impact provided by the Gambling Committee, which is a group of regulators representing all the 16 German lenders. And that is the problem with gambling regulation. If 16 lenders are involved and the relevant authority does not have the power to make its own decisions, can only go wrong because there are so many different opinions and attitudes that leads to compromises which are unacceptable for the industry and not to the better of regulation, protecting player and transferring this industry from an unlicensed environment to a licensed environment. That is the problem. So my suggestion is, under this situation, the dialogue should be started. It's time to build a level of trust, to learn that one can trust this industry, in particular those who proved being among the best because they got the first licenses. And they were as quick as possible in complying with this new regulatory system. I think there will be needs to talk with the authority, and I guess they will be open-minded. Probably there will be ways to solve this issue without needing the courts to make a decision in the future.
So collaboration, compliance.
Probably.
Are there any further courses of action that are open to operators?
Well, of course, operators can apply for extension of deadlines, but under this threat, and you don't have the certainty that it will work. Litigation was, of course, one of the options that needed to be considered. From the perspective of regulators with respect to sports betting, I think they're setting these tight deadlines for those who should implement the license conditions upon granting of licenses. And we're talking about 2 weeks deadlines as of now, in particular, or as of the 10th, 11th of November. But also there will be deadlines very tightly set to those applicants who are still progressing their application in order to get a license, because the authority, and that is of course correct, wants to avoid competitive disadvantage for the license holder, who will apply limits and restrictions and reduce scope of betting types, whereas pending applications in so far will not be affected by license conditions because they don't have any licenses, and let alone the view at the black market, which is simply massive and will of course benefit from restrictions being imposed too early.
Yeah. Quite clear and comprehensive, Jörg, and appreciate your opinion. Martin, over to you. What is from your perspective, GVC's perspective, the current situation with regards to sports betting license? How are you looking at this from London?
First of all, thanks for having me and thanks for listening to us. Secondly, I'd like to ensure the audience that despite my new rather long and rather American sounding job title, I still look after Germany for the GVC group. So I'll do my best to make the comments that I will utter pertinent. Jörg has touched on a number of key issues. Of course, ultimately, GVC as an operator that aspires to be the most licensed and the most responsible online gambling operator in the world, we are, as we've declared, very, very pleased to have finally obtained sports betting licenses in Germany. And we are also quite satisfied with the developments on the poker and slots front, by now renowned, if not legendary, toleration policy. Indeed, there are two key issues that I would perceive or have perceived in this space relates to a technical feasibility. Jörg has talked about the deadlines that we have been given, of course, as an operator that values compliance with licensing and all other requirement above everything else. We are and we will have sought to comply within the deadline, but indeed it would be appreciated perhaps a certain level of flexibility in that regard. But that's ultimately even doable. Having said that, and that's the other key issue that I would like to touch up on here, and that's the issue of there being, in my view, 4 groups of operators, if you will. So that's the operators that obtained their German sports betting licenses in the first licensing round. So by now, nearly a month ago. Then the second group would be represented by operators that got their licenses only last week. The third one, that's operators whose license applications are still pending. And finally, and unfortunately, there's a group of operators out there who have chosen to completely ignore the whole licensing process, and in most cases, if not all cases, also the toleration policy process. And as a result, what has or seems to have arisen in the current German market is a rather uneven playing field, which to my mind is the biggest practical issue, if you will. So my suggestion in that regard would be for the German authorities, just like authorities in other countries that have regulated online gambling have and successfully have done in the past, is to set a sort of a cutoff date for all the license applications to be reviewed and assessed, at which point license would either be granted or the license application would be rejected. This way, we would, in my view, create a level playing field, day zero, if you will, and only from that point onwards, and I would suggest that's a potential fix also to the issue that Jörg has talked about in terms of technical feasibility and the deadlines. That could be a potential solution to these two problems, i.e. the unlevel playing field and the deadlines that we've been given in the feedback to the implementation plan. So these deadlines would only start running from the point onwards when everybody that is supposed to have been licensed have got their licenses. And ultimately, this will also help the authorities with clamping down on those operators that are not prepared to take out the German licenses.
Quite a comprehensive answer, Martin. Bring this all to a point. Furthermore, what other courses of action do you think are available to operators like yourselves?
In terms of other course of actions, of course, just like in any other regulatory relationship, we have and will have raised our concerns with the regulator. We will seek to raise the same concerns with the German Gambling Council, German Gambling Committee, Glücksspielskollegium in German, that Jörg has referred to. And I suppose the last resort, the ultima ratio, would be legal challenges. But I suppose it may not be, or it never is, a very good starting point for any regulatory, even any other relationship, to enter it in this fashion, i.e. by means of a dispute. So indeed, I would echo the other point Jörg has made to the effect that it's about a dialogue, go and seek to convince the authorities that they, in an ideal world, would take into account the situation, the existing situation in the market, and approach it in a bit more pragmatic fashion to cater for all the concerns that we've been alluding to on this panel.
Yeah, quite clear. Martin, Jörg, thank you for that. We are actually still within the time of the webinar. We still have 1-2 minutes left. Is there maybe a last addition, recommendation you would like to add? Short one, Jörg, Martin? Jörg?
Yeah, I very much foster the idea of postponing sort of a deadline, say that is one date when every operator is going to launch with the license, and similar means that applicants need to complete their application and be rejected. But maybe not only rejected, the alternative could also be simply to cease the operations, because it's just on being online which causes the disadvantages, which would then be inappropriate. So probably this is also an alternative for the authority to deal with delayed applicants in order to give them a chance to come back on the license market, but cease the operations if they're too late in submitting the complete application.
Yeah. Quite clear. Martin, last recommendation from you, maybe?
And from my perspective, the reason why this transitional period, I mean, in the run-up to the post-July 2021 regulation is of such critical importance, is the fact that it's rather unlikely that come the 1st of July 2021, licenses will be or would be available under the future regulation. As a result, what we've got now will serve as a blueprint or guidance as to what the German market regulation will look like for at least a few years to come. So for that very reason, and in particular for the policy and black market related reasons, I would suggest that the authorities and the industry should strive to get it right now from the word go, without having to be grappling with any unfortunate issues only further down the track.
Yeah, okay, very clear. Well, thank you. Well, this, within the time that we've been given today, concludes the webinar. Be a part of SiGMA today. Thank you, Jörg. Thank you, Martin, for a very interesting discussion. This was very insightful, and I think we've given everybody a lot to think about. I would like to thank everybody at home and at the Team SiGMA. Thank you for listening in and participating in this virtual event. And hopefully next time we'll be able to visit you and see you in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.